G'day everyone and welcome to the GameDay Squad Aussie Rules Fantasy Show. That's right, it's Aussie Rules, not cricket as you saw on that intro. I'm Pitty and alongside Haz, we are the Fantasy Bros. We've partnered with GameDay Squad to bring you everything you need to know to succeed in GDS Aussie Rules this season. And for this episode, I'll be joined by the mighty Hoss from the GameDay Society. Hoss, how you going, mate? And thanks for joining the Round 3 live preview show. Oh, sorry, mate. I didn't hear you there. Apologies. Can you try speaking again there? I don't know if that's you or me there. Sorry. Yeah, apologies, mate. I'm not getting you there. You play around with that, and I'll get us stuck into the episode there anyway. All right. Apologies there to everyone. But again, for this live preview show, we're so excited. We've got some really big decisions to be making for this episode, or for this round, I should be saying. So for all of our viewers and listeners, just make sure that you've subscribed to all our Fantasy Bros socials so that you don't miss a thing this season. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Facebook, and Insta. Just make sure you search at Fantasy Bros AU, and your support is always very much appreciated by Dill, Stu, Haz, and myself. And if you're a new coach, it's not too late to get started in GameDay Squad. Just simply download the app or visit the GameDay Squad website, create an account, and use that promo code that you can see on screen there. That is FBAR26, and that's in capital letters as well. You'll be rewarded with 3 9-player common packs just for doing so. Now, again, as Mark is getting himself with his microphone, we're going to keep plugging away because we've got a big show. And as I said, I'm super excited going through all the findings that Haz and I have come across this week. Hoss, how you going, mate? Any luck with that microphone? No, I still can't hear you, mate. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure if that's you or me there. Anyhow, we're going to keep moving there just while he plays around with that. Looking at around the grounds and how we all went last week. Comment in the chat how you went. What was your best finish last weekend? As you can see on screen there, we both, Haz and I, had a good sort of round in that under 20 in the Sunday Showdown competition, and the under 22s as well, mind you. But yeah, third in the Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown for me. I was very happy with that. I had a Diamond Joe Richards sitting in my side leading up to that Sunday game, and I flicked him out at the last minute for a Diamond Tim Kelly, just sort of following the name and hoping that he might be able to bounce back once I saw he was added into the team, and finished third. So I was quite happy with that, but I would have loved a Diamond Joe Richards with the score he put up against those Bombers. And then, yeah, Haz, as you can see there, so he was finishing, in terms of his best round competition, it was the 23rd position in the Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown there for him. And in terms of our players as well, we had some really interesting scores across the round. We had a few that let us down across our squads, and then we also had a few that really starred for our squads as well. So in terms of our stars and our scars there, how can you go past Zach Butters? Like, he was just absolutely unbelievable the way he came out against the Bombers there at home. They're really struggling, aren't they? So we found that, yeah, he was probably one of our better scorers across the round. And sort of like we expected as well, we were pretty happy with that. And then obviously Max Gawn too. What a champion he's been in our ruck line, and we had a few other ruckmen we were looking at as well. But it's pretty clear that, yeah, we look at Gawny there, and he put up a massive score of 145 for coaches. So that was absolutely unreal for all of us. Now, Hoss, I can hear something there, mate. Hopefully that's all good.
Really?
Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
mate, I've just got this fancy mic, and I'm just using a headset because it is, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, sorry about that. Glad to be here.
No, that's all good, mate. Well, it threw me there a little bit. I was a bit worried. I couldn't work out if that was me or not. But how are you? It's good to see you. It's been a little while.
Mate, I'm good. I was a little bit nervous at the start when I saw the cricket intro, and I was like, oh no, what have I signed up to? But no, very excited to talk footy, especially after a surprisingly good round for me last week. I don't know if you talked about how you went last week, but
Yeah, we did a little bit. I was just saying third in the Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown for me. That was my best
Yeah, very
finish.
nice.
Placed, 10th in 22s as well, and some good scores across Classic, Challenger, Contender, but just outside the top 20 there for me in those
Yeah.
comps. But talk us through how you went, mate. I think you had a good
Yeah,
round from memory.
I did. So this was the first week where I decided to kind of shift my better cards into Challenger. So out of Champion, the top comp, down to the tier below. So I played got a diamond day, well not day cost, but got a diamond, a few good diamonds I was playing in that comp. Turns out my champion team, so my top team actually came second without the good cards. So
The good
look into
cards.
that what you will. Yeah, but it forced me to play players like Steel and who else? Short. So they did really well for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, it worked out nicely.
And that can happen too, can't it? Like once some of these big scores you don't always see coming, and you think you're moving across your best cards, but just some of those other ones really pop, and it can be the difference, can't it,
Yeah,
between that sort of 20th spot or hitting the podium.
yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, we've got a few people in the chat as well there. So we've got Max there in the chat. He mentioned that he placed first overall in starter and second in the round. So he said he can only go down from here. Unfortunately, that is probably true there. It's hard to hold on to that top spot, but absolutely incredible work there, mate. And Bella said he was 12th in prime time. So meh for the rest. 12th in prime time, that's a pretty good effort too. But yeah, mate, it was an interesting round. Hey, like we had lots of injuries. Like we had some just bullets that were flying
So
around. Like we
much.
had Petrarca and Rosie. They were the big ones. I was
Hmm.
really keen on Rory Laird, so I played him. And obviously he had that calf issue, which resulted in
Yeah.
like low time on ground, and he really slowed down in the second half. And a few of those players, you said you played a Jaden Short. Well, I missed him. I didn't play him. I didn't have a Dylan Moore down forward. So it just sort of meant that, those scores, I just missed out on those top 20s, unfortunately, if you look at the score.
Yeah,
But, mate, more importantly, are you still in the cup? Did you get a cup win?
I did. I did. It was an unconvincing win, but it was a win. Uh, because yeah, I had, I don't want to say easier matchup in case they're watching, but they were like lower down in the top qualifying teams. So it was a nice start, but I need to get my act together if I want to stay in. What about you? You're in still?
Yeah, had a win, which I was happy with. I think the furthest I've ever got in a classic cup is about probably second round. So I think I'll bow out this weekend just based off previous performances. But we'll see. We'll see if we can get through. I'm up against Ben a long
Yeah.
time, and I've seen
Oh,
his
no,
name
then.
around. So he'll be a pretty solid opponent, I think, and he'll give me a run for my money for sure. Who are you up against?
Honestly, couldn't tell you. So much going on with the EPL Cup as well that's just started.
Yeah,
There's a lot to wrap my head around and all the comps. I'm just put a team in, hope I win,
yeah,
move on.
yeah. I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of those scores in the EPL from the weekend as well. Oh, but that's
Yeah.
probably a
Oh
topic
my
for
God.
another day. And I was just going through our stars and our scars there, mate, on for who starred for our squads, who were the standouts, and who were those players that let us down. I've talked a little about Rory Laird. That's maybe a little bit harsh on him because he did have a bit of an injury, concern throughout that game, and he actually fought hard to continue on for us and still put up a reasonable score. But obviously, Luke
Yeah.
Jackson was probably the other one. Played in a couple competitions for Haz and myself, just a couple, and yeah, didn't quite do what people might have thought he would, and he could be a name we'll be
All right.
talking about later on. But have you got a player that sort of stands out at the moment in terms of who was one of your better picks and maybe who was one of your worst picks?
So I think Steele and Short, who I mentioned earlier, they were great picks for me. Steele, I did think would do well. Short was almost like what cards do I have left kind of play, but it worked out surprisingly well.
Yeah,
So that would definitely be my two top end ones. Just thinking back, who let me down? Oh, I mean, it's kind of harsh, but all the injuries. It's
yeah,
your Rosie, Petrarca. But then the good thing was, I mean, not much good about it, but everyone was playing him, so you
yeah,
can't,
correct.
you didn't go too far behind.
Yeah, Mason Redman as well in that Sunday competition as well. He would have been pretty popular. And Janeth is in the chat as well. G'day, Janeth. Good to see you there, mate. Great to have you on board. And Nate Daddies again as well, a regular. G'day, mate. How are you? He's saying he's been going garbage this season. Well, hey, we go again, another week, a new week in GameDay Squad, and that's what we love. And Janet has thrown his star and his scar in there as well. So that's Took Miller was his star, and that was a pod we were onto. And remind me, I've got another star that I want to talk about quickly. And then a scar for him was Laird/a Max Hall as well, who's been on fire to start this season, but yeah, did put up a slightly underwhelming score in that forward line. But yeah, my shout last week, mate, was an Andrew Brayshaw. He posted a 68 last, in round one, and then I had the gut feeling at the start of the week. I was like, I think it's an Andy Brayshaw week. Like, people will move off him. His role was exactly the same. Melbourne was a positive matchup. Just I had a feeling, and I decided to play him in Challenger. But funny enough, I actually got cold feet, took him out, and then Saturday morning I was like, nah, going to back myself, put him in. Let's just put him in. And he was absolutely unreal. So his all-star card really helped me out in that competition. Just wish I had backed him in some others. That's for sure.
I have a rule where I don't play Brayshaw or Sarong, because every time I get it wrong. Like, it's every time I pick one or the other, I pick the one. One of them tends to go like in the 60s, the other one goes 140. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
well, I can't wait. That's one of our conversations for later on, because they've got a really nice matchup. As you can see there, our fixtures there on screen. So that's a conversation we're going to have when we get to that midfield line. Is it Brayshaw? Is it Sarong? Is it both? Or is it none? And I think that decision will be a really pivotal one for coaches this weekend. So as you can see, for round 3, we've got some great games. Probably the place to start there are the players on the bye. So we can see we've got our Hawthorn, Sydney, Western Bulldogs, and Gold Coast players on the bye. And that's some very handy players that are unavailable for selection this week. So we've obviously got some handy forwards from Hawthorn in Dylan Moore and Connor McDonald. You've got some pods there in Nick Watson and Jack Ginnivan that you can't select them. Justin McInerney's been solid for Sydney as well. Can't pick him. Goulden and Heaney are still injured anyway. The Dogs have a heap of players too. So that's Tim English, Bont, Kennedy, Richards, Sam Darcy, plus a couple under 22s in Fraser and Sanders. The Suns obviously have a plethora as well. Although I think Noah Anderson got on his bye halfway through that last game anyway against the Tigers. So he had an early start to the bye, which was nice for him. He put his legs up. So it's going to be a really interesting round this week. And obviously a few injuries we'll talk about later too.
I think I'm most worried about the under 22 forward line. That's where it's going to hit hard, because Bulldogs, Hawthorn, and Gold Coast tend to be, at least a couple in there. So it's going to be very interesting.
It will, and I've actually looked at building that team, and I'm a bit stuck for just a couple of those last picks. So I'm going to have to think about that one a little bit closer, and maybe look at a few of those matchups and target some players in those juicy matchups. And speaking of those matchups, as you can see there, in terms of our primetime fixtures, the Thursday and Friday night games, we have the Cats up against the Crows. That's down at GMHBA. And then we have the Magpies up against the Giants, which should be a cracking game at Marvel Stadium there on the Friday night. So if you're building your primetime team, they're the 2 fixtures you are looking at. On the Saturday, we have 3 games. We have the Saints up against the Lions. We have the Dockers up against the Tigers over in the West, and that has some inclement weather about. There is a potential cyclone around the coast off of WA, and it looks like it's bringing some wind and heavy rainfall across the western side of Australia. So that'll be just one to keep an eye on. I only came across that news this afternoon. We won't let it make too many decisions for us tonight, but just something to be mindful of as the weekend unfolds. And then we've got the Bombers up against the Kangaroos on Saturday night. Our FantasyBros Sunday Showdown fixtures, we have the Power up against the Eagles over at Adelaide Oval, which should be an interesting contest there with some fantasy-relevant players getting about. And we've obviously got Carlton and Melbourne to round out the round. And they're those 4 teams you can be picking from when building your FantasyBros Sunday Showdown. Have you got anything quickly you want to add there, Hoss, just looking at those fixtures before we jump into going through our lines?
Like, just the 2 special comps are they're going to be so hard to pick, because for different reasons. Like the primetime games, just some incredible names in there that we're going to have to filter through. And then the showdown, I mean, it's a different challenge, which I really like, is that you kind of get the teams where you're not considering playing them until now. So, like, who's going to be our second ruck in that? So many questions already.
I've loved that. Particularly, I feel like I'm out of my depth a little bit in prime time, but I love that FantasyBros Sunday Showdown, because it's those lower salary cards we're looking at, and you've got to be really considered with where you put your salary too. And I've played around with the strategy in the first couple of weeks, and last week I think I've worked out the strategy to get a win. So it got me to 3rd spot. And this week I'm looking at hopefully taking out the win. So I think I've worked it out. But let's watch that unravel across the course of the weekend. Yeah, I'll give it a mention. I reckon, look, what worked for me last week, I identified the players who you had to have, and I put salary on them. So that was your Butters. That was your – who else did I have salary on last weekend in that game? Or even in the other one too. I can't remember off the top of my head because I've been building so many squads. Butters was the one that stands out. But your players like your Butters, your Rosie, as well, Mason Redmond, Zach Merritt, I had salary on those boys. Think about the matchup for your Silvers and who you're picking there. So I was really considering. So, for example, there were some players that I thought Willem Drew. I was like, Willem Drew has the matchup. He has the midfield role. He'll put up a really solid score. So I went for players like that, for example. And then I threw a dart. I went Joe Richards. He was my initial call. Diamond Joe Richards. I think he could go off. And he did, but I changed it out to a Diamond Tim Kelly at the last minute. But it wouldn't have got me first place anyway. So, so I think that's my plan. I'm doing that again. I'm sort of picking those players who I think we have to have. So that's your Jack Steele, that's your Zach Butters, that's your Max Gorn, that's your Christian Salem, putting salary on those boys. And then I'm going to, try and throw a diamond in there as well and see, and hopefully that pops off. And I think that's my plan. But as I said, who knows? That might not work out that way.
Nice. These ones are just a bit fun for me. It's, it's just nice to be like watching more than just this standard players every week. It's just it just feels nice. Like I'm actually enjoying footy a bit more, I think, because of them, which is crazy. So
cheering on some of the other boys, hey.
Yeah.
We've got Dylan in the chat as well from one of our resident rugby league fantasy bros. He's actually currently sitting 5th overall for the season in starter, and all he does is he watches our podcast and he plugs in who we pick, and he's coming 5th. And he asks for a few Friday morning late changes, and then we make those for him, and off he goes. So he's doing really well. Shout out to Dill, killing it over there in the starter competition for 2026.
Yeah.
Now, mate, let's get into it. We've got a lot to talk about for our defenders, mids, rucks, and forwards before we then go through, obviously, Haz and my contender teams, what we're thinking at the moment. And obviously, we've got that BroDown ShowDown pack to rip as well. So in terms of our defenders for the round, some really interesting matchups. In terms of our plug and plays, the players that I think you could pretty much be putting in most weeks and be confident with what. Sorry about that pause there. Sorry. So the players that we think there, Jack Sinclair, Lockie Ash, Dane Zorko, Josh Dacos, Lockie Whitfield, and Nazia Wanganeen Miller. We think that they're the ones that you can be putting in pretty confidently. Obviously, Connor Rozee is now injured. There are a few other little injuries in terms of that back line, which we won't go through all of them because they're maybe not a plug and play like a Josh Worrell, for example, and a Rory Laird. But in terms of that list there, those plug and plays, mate, is there anyone there that you wouldn't be super keen on this week, or are we happy to just move on and talk about those options for round 3?
I think, unfortunately, as a St Kilda fan, it's got to be Nas. Like he's obviously getting. Sorry about my dog barking in the background if that's coming through, but he's get the tag now and he's struggling a little bit. I think he will overcome it though because he's just brilliant footy player, has so many scoring avenues.
Yeah.
The problem is that he's still playing pretty well, just not converting it into fantasy points at the moment or GameDay Squad points. So he's probably one that I might be considering fading to fit in some of these more potty kind of players that you got on the list there. Other than that, though, Sinclair is just incredible seasons. Whitfield's maybe dropping down a little bit for me, but he's still quite a player. And Zorko's going to go massive this week.
Yeah, you would think so for sure. I just think I'm not sure there's anyone from Brisbane that can go with Nazia. So I think for me, I'm happy to play him again this week. I don't think Brisbane can cover him, and he scored pretty well on Brisbane in the past last year. So he's one I'm happy to roll with. It's Lockie Whitfield for me, just like what Nate Daddies has said. He just hasn't been hitting those really high ceiling scores, and I've actually been a bit concerned with how he's been moving too. So it seems to be Lockie Ash just dominating there in terms of that ball distribution, and Whitfield just doesn't seem to be as hungry as Ash for those really easy kicks inside the corridor and those little 45 kicks and getting the footy back. Just hasn't got that sort of hunger that he's normally had. And, if you look at it, some of the other players we'll talk about in a sec, they have that. So, I agree, Nate Daddies. I am falling out of love with Whitfield. I'm not game enough to fade him completely. But, I want to see a little bit of a change in his game first. So, from that list there, mate, those 3 options for round 3, we've picked out Dan Houston, Jaden Short, and Jordan Clark as our options. Who out of that list are you interested in most?
I think probably Houston. Like it looks like he's kind of slotting back into that Port Adelaide role we had. And the other two, I mean, the great options. I'm just a little bit worried about the weather. Like, don't
Yeah.
get that game over in Freo or Perth where it's, potentially going to be rough. They may do all right out of it, but still, there's always a risk that the AFL call off the game or something. I don't want to go fear mongering, but it's kind of thing where I just want to stay away. What about yourself?
Yeah. I'm probably going to wait as long as I can because I do like Jaden Short and what he's been doing. Like he's been in just red hot form. He was he was a pod for the round really last week, and we didn't unfortunately follow through with that advice ourselves, and he burned us badly, putting up that ceiling score. And yeah, he took advantage of that matchup, didn't he? So 159 GDS points, and the thing that I love about Jaden Short is it's off the back of 27 kicks. And it backed up his round one score of 140 GDS points off 23 kicks. So it's really clear that he's the player that's going to be delivering that ball out of the back line. And it might be off the back that Sam Banks has had a bit of an interrupted preseason. So I really like the role he's got. And I think there's going to be a lot of ball down there for a Jaden Short. If it goes ahead and if the weather's fine, it's just important to note, like he put up 124 GDS points against Freo last season, even though he had a bit of a down year in terms of his output overall. And Freo last week gave up 121 GDS points to Christian Salem last week, who plays a very similar role to Short, being that distributor for Melbourne. So I think that he'll be a really solid pick. And with that ceiling, it's very hard to say no to, especially when a Lockie Whitfield, for example, is struggling to put up those sorts of scores. So I think for me, I'm going to roll out a Jaden Short, but I'll just be watching to see what happens with that weather and how bad is it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good shout. Look, I think he's a great option, and I'm probably in the same boat. If it's going to go ahead and it's looking relatively okay, then he'll probably slot in.
Yeah. Have you got a Dan Houston rolling with him back there as well, or have you thought about him this week in your squads?
Look, Houston is probably like it's hard because he's showing great form, but then all of a sudden, like Collingwood could just flick the switch back to what they were doing last year, and then he scores a 60. So, like, I want to play him. I think in the other formats, like your super coach, that kind of stuff where you got the value, it might be a bit better. But for GameDay Squad, where you can literally kind of a bit more of a sorry, I think I dropped out there. Yeah, it's a little bit more of a kind of a risky pick, I'd say. So looking at that list of plug and plays, there's not a whole lot of space. So yeah, honestly, no idea.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I've really liked that. Like he didn't score well last year, but there's been that clear role change for me, and I was really scared at the start for the same reasons you picked out. But I like this year that the Magpies seem to be happy to chip the footy around and get it in the hands of a Dan Houston, a Josh Dacos, and a Nick Dacos. And I think from memory, Nick Dacos had like about 30 handball receives or something stupid in their last game. So like I just think for a Dan Houston, where they've come out and said that we want the footy in Houston's hands, we're better with him, with the ball in his hands. He's had a year in the system to get used to it, and they really want to build his confidence. He's taking kick-ins. I think that back-to-back 140s for me, that's enough. And I think that I'll be looking to play him this week. And I was one at the start to say I want to watch it and I want to see it a couple of times first, and I want to be confident before picking it. So I think I am. I think it's not a flash in the pan. But if he doesn't go well this week, you can blame me because I'll be playing him, and I'll be the reason why he doesn't play very well. But interestingly, in terms of those most popular defenders this week, mate, it's Jack Sinclair who's most popular across all standard comps at 41%. Lockie Ash is 2, Lockie Whitfield's 3, Naz is 4, Zorko's 5, Josh Dacos is 6, and then it's Jaden Short at 7. The next most popular is Dan Houston. So in terms of your top 8, like that's your top 8 most popular this week across the competitions. So there might be a little bit of safety potentially if you're rolling out a Dan Houston, knowing that a lot of other coaches are in the same boat. But they're probably the 8 coaches are looking at this week, just thanks to Stats Labs data there as well. And then in terms of Josh Worrell as well, any Josh Worrell love? I love Josh Worrell. I think he's incredible. But yeah, he's obviously got that niggle potentially. I know Mel's just put in the chat there that he's named to play, but he's not 100%. And apparently he left early. He left training early. I think for me, just in standard comps, wherever there's these questions around players, I'm not playing them. However, if we talk about the primetime competition, I think if he plays, he's a lock in that for me. So that's probably my thoughts there on a Josh Worrell there, boys. And for a Jordan Clark, mate, have you got an interest in any Freo defenders this week? Because into that conversation, I want to throw at Luke Ryan at you as well. Jordan Clark, yeah. Luke Ryan, you said you were unsure on the Freo mids. What about the Freo defenders?
I like Clark as a player. I just worry that the kind of Freo, the game plan is transitioning away from that high scoring kind of defensive roles that, Ryan was dominating in and Clark was dominating in back in the day. And because, they did well out of it fantasy-wise, but Freo didn't do that great out of it. So I think they have the potential in this matchup against Richmond. They should do pretty well, kind of pushing forward a bit more. But yeah, it would be it feels like it's one of the weeks where the standard picks are actually going to be the best picks. So you're not necessarily needing to look too far for your pods. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I find it hard. Same thing around Clark or Luke Ryan, for example. We've got Luke Ryan there as the one to avoid this week, which might be a bit scary. There's every chance he might score well, for example. But I think you're right. I think it's the game plan for us. And funnily, with Jordan Clark, he put up 75 GDS points in that first half on the weekend, sort of showcasing the ceiling that he does have. And he is a trusted ball user into a 109. So I was a little bit concerned by that sort of scoring profile there for him. And I wonder how much Luke Ryan sort of interrupted that with him coming back into the side. So yeah, I'm not as hot on a Jordan Clark or a Luke Ryan, for example. Whereas if you look at a Jaden Short or a Dan Houston, like those couple players you could be playing, I'm more confident in the role they have and how their team wants to use them, which will translate to GDS points. So yeah, they could put up a score, but I'm more confident in some of those other ones. And then
Ryan
that's
game at the start of the season. Yeah, Luke Ryan was struggling to get a game, so that kind of sits him back in the pecking order of roles, I would have thought. So
yeah. And the thing with Luke Ryan too, like why we've got him there as the avoid is we think he's a real trap, to be honest. He scored 53 of his points in the final quarter when it was all done. And he had that was 10 disposals and 5 marks in that final quarter, just real cheap junk time sort of points. He didn't get that in any other way. So I'd be more confident in Jordan Clark to do that than a Luke Ryan. And he only scored 70 GDS points in this same matchup against the Tigers last year when he had the same role, or they were playing the same way. If you go back enough, to 2024, mid 2024, he was putting up huge, 129 points, I think it was, something like that. So, yeah, I'm probably avoiding him for that reason in terms of how he built his score last week. And I'm more confident in a few other players there for me. If you wanted to go another player as well, I don't mind a Cal Wilkie there too for the Saints, for your boys there, mate. He's a great shout. He's had a great start to the season, so I do not mind.
I think it is a great shout. It'll be that kind of almost consistent, 100, 110 score you'll be looking at, which is, you might not get that ceiling score every week, but you should get a decent return off him with a bit of dependability. So, I like that.
Yeah, nice. And then our pods there. Geez, a week is, it's a long time in footy, as they say, but it's an even longer time when you talk about fantasy footy. We had Colby McKercher last week as the fade. We thought he had a disgusting role in round 1, and we thought his time on ground was really poor. We were really questioning how they wanted to use him. We were concerned by that, and we said, just don't play him, just avoid him. And he put up, I think it was 79 GDS points last week. So if you played him in a standard competition, that would have cost you the round. 22s, you might have got away with that. It would have been insulated a little bit, so you could play him there. Sunday as well might have been insulated a little bit, but there were some other better scores going around. But funny enough, they changed that role almost immediately last week. He's more importantly, his time on ground went from 64% to 71%. And they actually started to play him out of the back line. So his CBAs went down to 11%, and it was 30% the week before. And he spent time behind the footy, and he actually took 4 kick-ins, which sort of suggests to me that they're going to play him a bit more down back, or that's what it looked like last week. So with that role, he could be a bit of a pod this week because they come up against the Bombers, and they are allowing 98.8 GDS points on average to opposition defenders. It is the best matchup going around, and they allow the most marks by far to any other team. And I think he's got pig tendencies, Colby McKercher. I think he's a huge pod this week against the Bombers with that role shift last week.
Yeah, I rate that. And people will be scared of playing him. So it will be a genuine pod because people won't follow you.
Yep.
I think was it a week or two ago, they said they were going to manage his time back in after the interrupted preseason. But it seemed like they were going to be extra slow with it. So that has scared me. Whether, yes, it's increasing, but will it still be garbage this week?
Yeah.
Especially under 22s, I think he can definitely make it work there.
Yeah. Could be in terms of the point of difference in 22s, because I think it'll be more popular being played there. I think your pod play might be bumping your salary up on him, for example. Others might still be a bit scared by that, what he's doing, so they'll have the salary down. And then, in the standard comps, it feels to me like he's going to be a very relevant player to us soon, and definitely at some stage this year. It feels like this pick this week is going early, and if you go early, it can pay off. So if you want a little bit of a left field pod with a great matchup and has the ability to hit a ceiling score, I think Colby could potentially be the one. But Caleb Daniel has also been finding a bit of the footy back there for the Kangaroos. Now, mate, we've got Haz.
Chris, sorry.
I was just going to say that Haz in the chat there, but sorry, you go.
Oh, yeah, on Caleb Daniel, he went forward, I think, when McKercher went back, and then Daniel actually played well up front as well. So hopefully they've kind of seen that as, maybe this is working for us and we'll push on. But no, Haz.
Pod play. Yeah, Haz. Mate, forgotten what the podcast is. We'll have to reintroduce him. He's available next week, which is very exciting. So he'll be on the show and he's very excited. Nice. But, mate, we'll keep moving on. We've got Darcy Wilmot there as a pod. We think he's going to be a bit of a player against that St Kilda matchup. If you want another pod play for your back line, he's had a great start to the season and the Saints are allowing a lot of points to defenders. So I think that he could be, or actually we think Haz and I could be a great play in your back line if you want a bit of a pod. And then, as you can see, they're just adding on screen. We've got a few players on each slide you can see. So we've got our primetime pod of the week being Wayne Millerer. Pending what happens with that Adelaide backline, he could be a sneaky pod. Last week, he wasn't very good, but he was being burnt a little bit and didn't quite get the footy. Might have been the potential match against Geelong. Maybe he could be a bit of a pod in that primetime comp when you were looking for someone who might pop a bit of a score. Obviously, Sunday superstar, Christian Salem. I don't think you can go past him on a Sunday. And our under-22 player to watch is Zach Johnson for the Bombers. Looked really good and put up a very nice score for his coaches. Nice. Mate, we'll move on as well.
Actually,
and we'll jump into our midfield.
One potential Sunday superstar catch as well. I think Nick Newman's back this week.
Please.
And that's, Nick Newman's back from suspension from the VFL. I think it's this week, and I think he could be a sneaky pod. Because
would you be tempted in a Sunday comp?
I'm thinking Sunday comp. I'm not giving him a soft launch into my team, see if he actually does all right. But yeah, that could be a sneaky one too.
I saw someone packed his legend earlier in the Discord. Did you see that?
Oh wow, that's in a few
massive.
years too late, but still going to be great now.
Yeah, exactly right. So, mate, our midfielders there on screen. We'll jump across these lines. We'll keep moving through. In terms of our plug and plays, we've got Nick Dacos, Zachy Butters, Bailey Smith, Max Holmes, and Zach Merritt. We think you can be pretty confident with all those boys there. In terms of the players on a bye, Bontempelli's probably the big one that we need to be aware of in terms of our midfielders. But you could probably throw the rest of the Bulldogs midfielders into that. Your Ed Richards and your Libbers, or Libbers injured as well. Sorry. they're all going to be on a bye as well, your Matty Kennedys. And then Jordan Dawson is probably the big one today, getting that news. He's injured. He's going to miss this week, so you have to take him out of your squads. When you see my contender side later, I'll have him in there, but he'll be coming out for one of the players you'll see there on screen. In terms of those options, mate, who is standing out to you at the moment?
I think Zachy Merrick against North. I think he tends to do pretty well against them, and there should be a fair bit of, opportunity. Yeah, he might get a bit of a tag, but I don't know how much of an impact that will have on him. And the Essendon midfield, as bad as they're going overall, it is kind of looking a lot stronger than it had in the past. So I think him. Butters should do pretty. He'll carve up West Coast, so that should be a nice one too. And then Dacos is just Dacos. I don't think it really matters who he plays. He'll be picking it up. So it's probably just those two boys. I mean, they're still great picks, but they probably fall slightly below everyone else.
I've liked Max Holmes to start the year as well. I think they've really changed how they use Max Holmes. I've seen him a lot behind the footy, taking kick-ins, running through the midfield, and a bit like a few of the other defenders we've spoken about. Although Max Holmes has that midfield role still, they really want the ball in his hands at all times because he's such a good user of that footy. So the only thing is he might be susceptible to a tag at times that we need to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think all those players are good players this week. And yeah, I love that Zach Merritt shout too. I think he could be a good player too. So if we look at the others who are rounding out our side, in terms of Brayshaw, Callaghan and LDU, they're three players we've picked out. Have you got anyone there that you're looking at plugging into your squads?
I like LDU as well. Up against Essendon the other way. I think it's just points to be had in that because there's two, I guess, underwhelming teams, we'll say. And if you have the quality, so I'm sure we'll talk about Sheezel later, but there's definitely points to be had there. Callaghan, I really like. I just worry with that, GWS lack of support around him. Being like a younger player, he's carrying a lot, and I can see it maybe going. He'll hit like those 100 scores, but you're wanting like 130 from your mids. And then, Brayshaw, can't touch him, unfortunately, based on my own rules, but would love to play him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. With Callaghan as well against that Collingwood matchup, it's actually been a good matchup for him in the past. Just looking at the data, and it was probably a bit underwhelming last week. He was on 65 GDS points at 3/4 time, but he just finished with a house on fire, scoring 48 GDS points in that final quarter. To bump it up to 113 for his coaches, which was a nice score in the end after you saw that 3/4 time score. That Collingwood, they're a good matchup for him. So they're the fourth easiest team currently for opposition mids to score against this season. They allow 92.6 GDS points per game. And again, that's courtesy of Stats Lab there and their data for that positional matchup strength. And the Pies are actually Finn's fourth best team in terms of his career scoring so far. He seems to go quite big on them each time. And their most recent one, he had 33 touches, 4 marks, kicked 2 goals and a score of 128 GDS points. So I think if you're looking for a matchup, Finn Callaghan's the one. I was thinking today, does a Harry Perryman go to him? Do you reckon Collingwood will send maybe a Harry Perryman to a Finn Callaghan, knowing what he's done on them in the past, and they sent Perryman to a Naz in that first round? The opening round. Do you think that could be a potential flag? Because I just thought about that this afternoon.
Yeah, potentially. And then if you shut down Callaghan, who have you got running through with him? Toby Green's in there at the moment. But I mean,
they don't have someone.
Yeah, so that's a legitimate concern, I think.
I didn't get to talk to Haz about that and get his ideas either, because I only just thought about it as well. So Haz, if you are watching, mate, and you can pull over and chuck a comment in, let me know what you reckon. If you think that he'll go to him, because that was something that I had thought about. But otherwise, I think the matchup is a tick. His previous history, tick. He's a gun, tick that off. Yeah. So I think he's a good pick, but that's my only one little flag with him that I'll be having a think about over the next couple of days. LDU, like you just sort of mentioned there before, I think he's been in great form to start this season, but we just haven't seen that ceiling score. He's just had 105 and 111 GDS points, and he had that good matchup last week with the Eagles, and even the Demons are a good matchup. So, yeah, it's just one. He can rack up possessions. But, yeah, I do just sort of wonder, can he hit that ceiling score for us? Sam Durham might have done a job on him in the past, but the other thing to consider is that the Bombers are just in shambles. So I don't think LDU is a bad pick at all this week. I think he can be going there for that Bombers factor alone, and the fact he's in good form, North looking really good. I think he's a really good shout this week. It's just my question for him is, does he have the ceiling that we have seen from him in the past? Because he's been a player that's burnt coaches previously with injuries and, flopping when people think he should go well. That's the only little asterisk I have next to him. But he looks as if he's got that good matchup.
Yeah, I think from memory, he had an absolute stinker of a last quarter last week. He was absolutely killing it until three-quarter time. See if I can get that's up here, maybe not. But he was. I think he had like one touch or something ridiculous in the last quarter. Might be making that up, but yeah, I think he
well,
does
actually
have
has.
potential to.
Yeah, so has that here. He actually put that in for me to talk about, was that just that he has that ability to drift in and out of games as he wants. So he had 48 points in that first quarter, 18 in the second, 36 in the third, 14 in the last. So he's quite unreliable. When you look at a Zach Butters, for example, where he refuses to come off when the game is all done, they're up by, a heap of points, and he's still out there screaming for those little short kicks. And LDU doesn't do that. So I think he'll be happy to park the bus. And that's probably the other little thing to consider there when you're picking him. And Janeth there's jumped in the chat and said, any concern about a FOS tag on Zach Merritt? I don't think so, personally. I think Merritt's been dealing with that his whole career, and I don't think he'll be too worried about a Finn O'Sullivan going to him. Do you have any thoughts on that there, Hoss?
I think it might happen. I don't know if it will make it wouldn't change my decision to play him or not, I think, because the tag would probably go to him anyway. Yeah.
And as I said, he's been dealing with that his whole career, I reckon. That's what he's been doing, is he's been getting tagged week in, week out, and, he's averaged, a really high score for a long time, so I'm probably not concerned with that. But if you're talking to me about Caleb Sarong, and if you're saying someone's likely to go to him, well, that's a very different conversation, because we had Tolstrup, right? Colton Tolstrup went to him last week and did a job on him. And did you see him talking to him at that sentence as well? Just before they got the game going, he was in his ear just chatting to him. And, I just looked at that. I wondered what he was saying. Just like, man, I've got you covered. You're going out of the game. And, I think it was Andy Bray at the end of the game. Andy Bray at the end of the game actually made a comment that I found very interesting. He said they mentioned that Sarong was quiet and he had a big game, and he came out and said, yeah, look, it's a credit to Caleb, who, when he's copping attention, he runs really selfless patterns for his team and he lets us do all the work. So, that's a flag. We don't want our players doing that. We don't want you running selfless patterns. We want you being a pig. We want you, putting yourself in spots to take points off other players. So the fact he came out and said that just sort of shows that, if there's the likelihood of a tag, you pretty much can't go Caleb Sarong. But is this the week where he could pop, mate, against the Tigers over in Perth? Obviously, putting the weather aside.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, he's a player that has a massive ceiling, but then a terrible floor. So it's like, you don't tend to get those like mediocre, the 110s, or I shouldn't say 120 mediocre, but you don't get those kind of middling scores that you'd be aiming for most weeks. You get the 160s or you get the 60s. And I struggle to kind of find a spot for that in my team most weeks. That's purely from like a risk reduction kind of stance. But again, if you can pick it, it will win you a week. And if you don't have him in a week, he goes bang, then you're going to struggle. So it takes a lot of confidence.
It does, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there too. Like, he's going to be one of those players that will shape round 3. He'll be one that can win the coaches around, or he will lose it single handedly for them. He's 78 GDS points last week after being tagged out of the game by Colton Tolstrup. I can't believe I'm saying that. And his last 3 against the Tigers, he's had 120, 87, and 156 GDS points. Now, that 156, mind you, that was back in 2024. Prior to that change in game style we've seen. So put an asterisk next to that 160 and don't expect that. It shows you he's got his ceiling. And if nobody goes to him and he doesn't cop attention, he could easily put up one of those scores. But I think it's more likely that if he doesn't cop attention, he's putting up one of those 120s. But there's every chance he puts up, an 87 or less like he did last week. So, it's just one of those ones where you've got other options. You're probably not going there, but I think if you want to play him, he could win you the week if you just get the right side of the coin. I'm probably more confident in Brayshaw myself. Are you playing a Brayshaw this week?
No, I don't think I play either. I think Brayshaw would be where I went. I honestly think Brayshaw's a better player.
Yeah.
I still don't know if I can. The conditions are a big concern for me. I think there'll probably be a few more tackles to have, but that outside kind of easy ball is going to be harder to find because it'll be so cagey. There's just games that I just try to stay away from, I think.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of a flip of the coin, doesn't it? In terms of Brayshaw's previous score, though, because I was keen on him last week, and I'm pretty keen on him again this week. But again, this is all under that weather cloud too, so we'll just have to keep an eye on that. But his last few scores against the Tigers, bit opposite to Caleb Sarong. He's hit 132, 174, and 140 GDS points, and the Tigers are his second best matchup. And they're also giving up currently the second most amount of points to opposition mids this season. They've allowed 94.2 GDS points on average. I also think that there is a narrative where the Dockers just towel up the Tigers like they did last week to the Demons. And I think if they're doing that, I think it's off the back of Andy Brayshaw getting that outside ball. We know he's not going to cop attention. I just think I can't go past an Andy Brayshaw. Obviously, if the weather's going to be okay. So he's got some really juicy matchup data if you look back far enough. Not far enough. If you look back to last year when they played them.
Yeah, I kind of wish you didn't tell me that because now it's just going to be sitting in the back of my head and it's going to play with me all week. So,
well,
look, there's
mate, interestingly, he's less than 20% played this week currently. If you're looking at Stats Lab data, we've currently got Butters, Merritt, Dacos, Dawson sitting there at 4, so he's going to have to come out for someone. Smith at 5. Bont obviously has the bye, so you can't count him. Sarong is in the top 7 if you're even counting a Dawson and a Bont. So he's much more popular than an Andrew Brayshaw. So he's played at 25% and Brayshaw's currently 19.6%. And I'm much more hot on an Andrew Brayshaw given the previous form he has against the Tigers, his ceiling that he's shown, the form he had last week, the role's the same, the matchup's great. I really like him this week as a potential play, but just something to keep an eye on with that weather, hey?
No, right that.
Yeah. Now, we'll keep moving as well. In terms of Timmy Taranto, I'll brush over him really quick and the thinking behind him as a bit of a pod. He hasn't been in amazing form. He's been in good form. He's put up 92 and 127 points this season. And his score against the Suns, that was off some heavy tackle numbers. So maybe if there's a bit of rain about, maybe he could be even more of a pod. You could mount a bit of a case for that too. But the Dockers give up the third most points to opposition mids, so they're actually a really positive matchup. And it was Jack Steele last week who feasted on the Dockers. He put up 156 GDS points. And I just think that if you look at Timmy Taranto's last 3 against the Dockers, he's put up 114, 123, and 155 GDS points. And coaches won't be looking at him. They've got a lot of other names to be considering. And if you're looking for a real genuine pod, Timmy Taranto is your man.
Yeah, I think I like Taranto more than the 2 Freo boys, to be honest. I think if you look at Jack Steele, who carved him up last week, he's like a tackling mid, and Taranto will do the same. He's just one of those guys who just works hard all game. He's in a struggling side. He just knows he has to carry a lot of that work through the middle. He's going to be where the ball is. He's going to be, getting points in a wet condition.
Yeah.
I actually quite like that pick, to be honest. So that might be one where I'm looking, if it is raining heavily and going ahead, I'll get him in.
Yeah, could be. He loves the little scrub kick off the ground too in those conditions. So that's a nice little +4 points as well. And then Jai Caldwell there, that's Jai Caldwell. I think you can pick him probably most weeks, but coaches will be off him and maybe off the Bombers a little bit. Given recent form, he still put up a pretty solid score last week too. So I think that you can easily go him this week. But Sam Walsh, I think he's the one to be avoiding in particular. So tag alert. I think that Colton Tolstrip, he's tagged Naz, he's tagged Caleb Sarong, and he's held them to both 99 and 78 GDS points respectively. Now, I was worried about Walshy because in that Sydney game where he got off the chain, they sent James Jordan to him, and he was very quiet for the rest of the game. I just think that he's one. If you're looking at, I'm probably trying to avoid, and I'm actually going to avoid him in the Sunday competition as well as another little pod play there, hoping that he's a really popular pick because of the name, and just hoping that gives me another little edge to hopefully give me a ticket into the final there. So, were you looking at a Sam Walsh? Were you keen to avoid? What are your thoughts there?
I'm less worried about the tag on Walsh. I'm a little worried about the tag on uh, Jaeger Smith. I think
Oh,
he's
you reckon
the
it's going to
kind of play.
really?
Well, he's been like carving up, and I feel like as effectively a first year player, he's taggable. Like you could probably shut him out of the game a lot easier than you could a Walsh.
Mm.
So if you're looking at someone you want to shut down who is getting a lot of involvement, he's where I'd be going. So
In his
that's
third game.
yeah. But
Welcome to
I
the
mean
big
his
league.
third game he's been, you know, carving it up. So
He's looked
that's I
incredible.
mean he's a must start in the under 22s, but
Mm.
I think there is a real risk that he could start getting attacked, even though he's only played 3 games or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I don't know.
He's
But
incredible, isn't he? I'll be very keen to see that then. I think,
mm,
I think Haz and I were looking at Walsh. We hadn't even contemplated the idea that it could be a
yeah,
Jagger that cops the tag. So we'll have to see how it goes. He'd be tricky though, I reckon. Like his pace around the contest and he's very agile.
yeah,
I think Walshy, Tolstrup might have a bit more success with the Walsh, but it'll be very interesting to see. I think
yeah.
they do have to run a tag. They, Tolstrup's done it the past 2 weeks. I know I was listening to Jonathan. He mentioned on his podcast that Stephen King, he works in that Geelong system where they work with Oisin Mullen and Mark O'Connor. So I think they'll be employing the tag again. It's just do you think it's going to go to
Yeah,
Walsh or Jagger and let that inform your decision? I'm going to back in
yeah,
ours, and I think if you're keen that he might be going a Jagger, and you think Walsh could be okay, then give him a play,
yeah,
and it'd just be interesting to see where that sort of lands this week.
yeah. I think with Jaeger can move around pretty freely, but like 50% of it takes mental. Like if you get in someone's head, then you've got them
Yeah,
tagged. So I think I hope I'm wrong. I'm gonna play him in the under 22s, no problem, because if you don't, you're cooked. And even if he
yeah,
gets tagged, he's probably going to be one of the best midfielders in the under 22 still because he's that good. But I think I'd be staying away from him for the Sunday game. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, nice. Well, mate, we might move on. As you can see on the screen there, though, our primetime pod for the week, Sam Berry, doing some really good things over there. And obviously with Jordan Dawson out, so might only help his scoring output potentially. And we've obviously got Zach Butters as your Sunday superstar to be playing him, and Jagger Smith in the under 22s as a player watch. Just been in great form coming off that bye, and maybe an extra reason to watch him as well, as we just mentioned.
Hope I'm wrong.
Now, the ruck line, mate, I think this is a very interesting line to be looking at this week. I think Maxi
Mm-hmm.
Gawn, he's a plug and play. You just put him into your side and you'll be very confident what you're going to be getting. Tim English is on a bye. We've obviously also got Brodie Grundy and Jared Witts as well. They're on bye, so we can't be picking those guys. Do you reckon, in terms of the other options, is it as simple as going a
Mm-hmm.
Tristan Cherry again this week? Has LJ come back into contention even after a bit of a down game last week? And Darcy Cameron's the third player we've got there as he's probably like instead of an option, he's probably more of a pod, to be honest with you. But I think he's a genuine option you can be considering. And I think there's a few different directions coaches could go. So what are you all thinking? What's your thoughts in the ruck line this week?
I think there's a lot of good options. I think most of the big names would be considering are all have good matchups. I think Cherry's going to walk over Essendon. Blackson's
Mm,
still in there. He's not been doing that great, and he had Cherry. Like there was concerns around Cherry, like with the new rules, but
yeah,
last week I think he had his best game he's had all his career basically.
yeah,
Jackson coming up against a Nankless Richmond. Yeah,
yeah,
because Nank's injured, so he'll be don't know who he'll be rucking against, but even if he's playing midfield minutes, the only concern there is the wet, which might make it harder for a tall.
yeah,
But he's a unicorn. He'll kind of do whatever he wants. And I think Cameron has a good history against GWS from memory. I think he scores all right against Briggs, so he could be a nice little pick there too. So to be honest, I think I'll be going. I don't know if I'll be picking Gorn. Nah, he's got Carlton. Yeah, I'll pick him. Yeah.
Well, I did the same thing, mate. I put Gorney in, and then I was like, "Who's my second?" And then as I went through all the data, I actually think I'm going to be playing two others as opposed to Maxi Gorn. Now, I'm not game enough to do across all comps. I think I'm actually going to split. So English, Gorn, Jackson, and Cameron. I'm going to split all four of those across my comps, just so that I make sure I've got a bit of everything. Because it's actually a very hard one to split. And you mentioned, Tristan Cherry had a great game last week against the Eagles. They are the best matchup for the rucks. They're conceding so many points for their opposition ruckman. And that was actually off the back of 44 hitouts, like you said, in terms of his hitouts there. So he was incredible, and that was 168 points, which was unreal. The thing to think about, as you said, Blackiston as their ruckman. He's if you actually look at data, like it doesn't scream like a great matchup. The Bombers are actually the sixth hardest matchup for opposition rucks when you're looking at Stats Labs data all across that start of the season. But if you actually dig a little bit deeper, like there's a bit more than that going on. You've got to consider that the Bombers have come up against Hawthorn in that first week. So they've got Meek and Reeves. They scored 77 and 84, respectively. And in that dual ruck setup, we know that's never conducive to a high fantasy score. Plus, I think Meek and Reeves are a tier or two below these top rucks we're talking about. So that's one thing. Jordan Sweet came in last week, put up an 80 against the Bombers. Jordan Sweet is Jordan Sweet. He's not a top of the line ruck, and it was his first game for the season. So I think if you look at that data and say they're the sixth hardest matchup, I don't think that's accurate. I think that we've got to look at who they've played, and I think exactly like you said, Tristan Cherry this week could absolutely put up another score very similar to that 168 because he'll just bully Blackiston. He'll throw him out of the way. He'll use his weight. His hitouts could be anywhere near that 40 to 50 mark again. Last time they played, he got 39 hitouts, and that was against Todd Goldstein last year with Peter Wright chopping out. So I think that against Blackiston, I think he's on for another huge score this week, exactly like you said. And that's just a little bit of data there to sort of back up what you were thinking.
Yeah.
So I think we lock him in.
Yeah, I think we have to. I was convinced I wasn't going to play him and his value was going to drop and everything, but I think he's a must there. But then who do you play along with him? That's the tricky bit.
Yeah. Well, mate, how's this for LJ, right? So they come up against the Tigers, and I actually did a bit of digging when you said, like who's he going to ruck against without Nankervis? So Nang's injured, so you can't be picking him if you're a GDS coach or if you're any fantasy coach, to be honest, and not even Adam Uze can pick him, so he's not playing. When he went down, it was McKelty Lafau who came on and sort of did some backup ruck, so he's that hybrid player with a bit of a league background. He's not a ruckman by any means, but he's just got a good leap. So I think they've got to bring someone in for him. Otherwise, they're rolling with a McKelty Lafau and maybe a Noah Bolter pinch hitting in the ruck. But the ruckman they've got, Samson Ryan, he's got a foot injury, so they won't be playing him. It's an Oliver Hayes Brown. He is a 25-year-old ruckman that played in the VFL on the weekend. He's about 205 centimetres. He's the player that could come in for his first game at AFL level. And on the weekend, mate, their VFL side played Southport because I wanted to go and see how does he hold his own in the ruck contests. So they played Southport. He lost the ruck battle to Braden Crossley. And Braden Crossley, he was the guy that was training with the Bulldogs last year for that SSP position. And he didn't get it in the end. So he's playing for Southport as that ruckman. And he's been a very good ruckman for a long time. He's got that AFL sort of body. He won the hit-out battle 40-15 against an Oliver Hayes Brown in the VFL. So if that's what he can do, you could just imagine what an AFL player like Luke Jackson is going to do if he's getting half his team CBAs. Because that's the thing, like the role's really good for LJ. He's getting half his team CBAs. He's the ruckman getting high time on ground. It's Sean Darcy who's not. And I think that pending weather, like you said, he's another one that I find incredibly hard to leave out if that's his matchup.
Yeah. And this is almost the kind of game where you don't want to be, if it's that wet and Richmond don't have a ruck, are they going to take two rucks in? Like, is Darcy even going to play? And is that better or worse for Jackson, though, is the thing? Like, I don't know.
It's better for him. It's better for him 100%.
Yeah.
If he's out, I'll be locking him in so quick. The only thing that might happen is Mason Cox has been in good form, so they might drop a Sean Darcy for a Mason Cox. I feel like the role will still be the same. I don't think they would play around with Luke Jackson's role just because they're bringing in Mason Cox. But I think that might be the only thing they do. They won't play three talls. That's not going to be part of their system. They're going to go with the two. So I'm pretty confident on his role being the same, even if a few changes happen. So, and I just think that matchup for the Tigers, LJ coming off a game where he's a bit down, I think that he'll want to fill his boots up again, and this could be the way to do it against a ruckless Richmond Tigers. So he's very hard to leave out. But guess what the two scores were Darcy Cameron's put up against the Giants last two times they've played?
What were they? Massive, I bet.
156, 152.
Yeah. See, then there's that. Like, what do we... Well, I guess that's prime time.
Yep. So,
everyone's going to be playing him in prime time, though, because who else are you going to play? I guess you got McAndrews maybe, but...
Yeah, he's the pod I've got on screen there for your primetime comp. But I'm not sure how much of a pod he'll be given the ruck selections you've got in that primetime competition, because he's been in pretty good form. Lockie McAndrew, I think he's, we've got him there as a point of difference for the standard comps, just like Jordan Sweet, who's got that West Coast matchup this week as well, which is the best matchup going around for rucks. And they gave up that 168 points to big Tristan Cherry last week. They gave up 129 to Wits the week before. So Sweet could be a pod, but I just think that, Sweet and McAndrew, it's just very hard to try and figure out if they're going to, how do you put them above a Sherry, Jackson, Cameron, Gawn? I don't really think you can, unless you're still building your card collection, for example, or you've just got a really super polished team and you just want to chuck them in. But Lockie McAndrew is probably the one you'll look at in that primetime competition.
Yeah, agreed.
And then I'm probably avoiding...
Really have one, and then Briggs probably won't do well against Cameron, who's going to smash it. So I think you kind of have to go McAndrew.
Yeah, exactly. And they're the fifth best matchup to be targeting too. Sorry for rucks as well. That GDS matchup, they are very, very positive. They gave up 141 points to Timmy English. Well, that was Briggsy, sorry. He gave up 141 points to Tim English when they met early this season. I just think that, coming off a bye, had a bit of a subpar 101 before his bye up against Lockie McAndrew, but he's actually shaping as a bit of a tough matchup for rucks, with Tim English putting that low score against him. So if we go back to opening round, he had 131. So we know he can score. He's got a ceiling. He's got a good history of scoring against the Giants. Back under the lid, I really like him. And he was one I was super keen on at the start of the week. I chucked him in my squads, and then I saw the good matchups for Cherry and Jackson, and then I was conflicted. So I'm splitting all four across my three standard comps.
Yeah, definitely. Normally the rucks are pretty much set and forget, but this week there's a lot of options. So, but I'll definitely be avoiding those infielder guys, unfortunately, like you said down the bottom. It's just, it's frustrating, but it's... like De Koning hasn't been too bad. He's just not good enough to be that elite GameDay Squad scorer. Yeah,
sharing the ruck duties too doesn't help him. I've mentioned that when you have two rucks in your team that share those duties, they're taking a market share of the points available, and it's just never really conducive, and they're often chopping between positions. So I feel like, you'd probably be able to comment more on this than I can, mate, as a Saints supporter, but I feel like Rowan Marshall's just being wasted, being played the way he is. And I understand they wanted De Koning in. I understand why, but I just feel for a bit of Romar there, who's been such a good, reliable player for us in fantasy for such a long time, and just feel like it's a bit wasted this season.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to invest in the cards, both of them, because next year, I reckon Romar will be the sole ruckman at Geelong, but he'll be listed as a forward, so he'll be one of the most valuable players. And De Koning will mature another year, solo ruckman. I think there is good upside to both of them. It's just not this year.
Yeah, exactly. Chuck in the chat as well. Who are your two rucks this week going in that comp you're prioritising? I'm looking at a Cherry and a Jackson in the comps I'm prioritising. But again, I'm just really split between those others. I'll have them across my other comps too. So chuck them in the chat. Who are you keen on? And in terms of those players on screen there, we've got our Sunday superstar and Max Gawn. You're locking and loading him in that competition. And Cooper Duff-Tyler as well had 61 GDS points on the weekend. So he was great. And Mitch Edwards is probably the other under-22 ruck you'd be looking at this week coming off his bye. But he had 47 GDS points on debut. And again, Adelaide are a very tough matchup for opposition rucks. Lockie McAndrew is restricted. Darcy Cameron to 101 and Tim English to a sub 100. Actually, what did he get last week? Yeah, sub 100 GDS score, which was crazy. So I think I'd be going a Cooper Duff tight late in 22s over a Mitch Edwards. Happy to move on to the forwards, mate.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's get into it. I think, again, there's probably some big decisions to be made in the forward line. I think it's just a really, really interesting round. And I was saying to Janeth earlier too that, yeah, this is a week where there's lots of big decisions to be made, and some of these decisions will really shape around. So the plug and plays for our forward line, you can see there on screen. We have Harry Sheasel, Brian Myers, Sam Flanders. And I've got Toby Green there, but just probably based on his consistency, I think that you'll probably know what you're getting from a Toby Green each and every week. I do question if there are some other options this week that might have a higher ceiling than what he could provide potentially against a Collingwood. But I think if you play him, he won't burn you. So I've put him in that box anyway because we've talked about him a little bit so far this season. And just consider that Christian Petrarca's on a bye, but he's also now injured, so he won't even be back next week. It's unlikely that he will. We've got Dylan Moore, Connor McDonald, Sam Darcy, Justin McInerney, like all those players we've looked at so far, they're all on a bye. So where are we going? Like, what are our plans? If we look at those three options for round 3, is there anyone there that you've got sitting in your squad at the moment, or you will have sitting in your squad come lockout?
Yeah, I think I do like Pickett against Carlton. I think that's. I mean, I don't know what the scoring history is like there, but I think Pickett has such a good ceiling that eventually he'll tap into like a better floor. Simpkin, I really like the matchup too. I just worry that even in the good matchup, sometimes he seems like he should be doing stuff and he's just not there. Hill's just been so good for us. Like, I want to say surprisingly, but not surprisingly, this is like the old school Hill this season, which I really like.
Yeah,
But the one,
he's looked good,
sorry,
hasn't he? I had to make a change today. I had to, obviously, with in my challenger side, I have a Diamond Jordan Dawson, which is one of the shining lights of my challenger side, and the reason why I sort of put a team in each week in that competition. And being injured, I went, oh, what am I going to do? Like, I don't really have another Diamond midfielder to play, so I've got to play a Platt there, and I have a Diamond Brad Hill that I thought, hey, Haz and I were talking about Hill as a potential pod this week, given his great start to the season. I'm just going to chuck it in, and we'll see how we go. From a Saints fan, mate, would you be confident playing him this week?
maybe not against Brisbane is the only concern. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. He in saying that though, he has put up like a good score on the Lions in the past as well. So if you actually go back, so I think it was 125 GDS points last time they played, round 7 last year, under the lid, 33 touches. So it's not, it is a tough matchup. And it's one that teams don't necessarily score well against, but Hill has done it last year. And I also think the Lions probably aren't the same team as what they were last year when they're at their best and they're at full strength. So I think that's probably another thing sort of in the favour of picking a Brad Hill as a bit of a pod. Yeah, he's probably a bit more out there and a few others, but yeah, in Challenger, I think I'll have to play him this week, possibly.
Yeah. One player who's not on the screen who I'm a little bit keen on, purely because of the Adelaide carnage down back that they're potentially going to be missing this week, is just
I think I know.
Yeah.
I had him on screen at the start of the week, so he was in Zach Bailey's spot. Now, I probably should have put him in the plug and plays, to be honest, because I think he's been very consistent. Yeah, I think he's a really genuine option. So you like the thought of a Sean Manor this week?
I do. And then even like a Jeremy Cameron, he's fit, isn't he? I haven't missed anything with that. But
Yeah, no, he put up a
yeah,
90 something last week.
Yeah, he's like someone that could, like, it's the kind of game where, yeah, they're going to be a little bit in shambles, even if they've still got the big men marking. I think the movement down back is going to be a bit off, which is kind of what I look for. So
yeah,
he would be a decent option.
You'd play Myers. You'd have Myers, Sean Manor.
Yeah.
2 cats.
Maybe, yeah, 2. I don't know if I'd go 3. 3 might be a stretch, but I think maybe, yeah, Myers and Manor would be there. Yeah, even like a Shannon Neal could go big. I don't know. But What are you
There's a
looking at?
couple.
Obviously,
Yeah, well,
there's
in
only
terms of
like
Cozzy,
4 on the set and forget, so you're gonna have to be picking some extras.
yeah, well, we've got some good picks there lined up. Cozzy Pickett, just you mentioned, he could go well. I actually think that he will match up quite nicely against the Blues, and he's coming off a bit of an underwhelming 89 points against Freo. So I always like when players like haven't played at their best and they've got a good matchup the next week because they typically go quite well. So I think that Carlton, they're a neutral matchup for opposition forwards when you look at their data, and we know that he's got that plays through the midfield. And he kicked 5 goals on the Blues last time. So he got 19 kicks for 23 touches. And what was that? I don't have the GDS points there. I apologise, but 5 goals against them. So he's one that does have a bit of form against the Blues. And given he'll be a pretty popular play this week, I think he's the one that I've got locked into my side. Now I'll come back to a Jai Simpkin and a Zach Bailey because I think that they're quite good, but actually, no, I'll go there first because I did take Sean Manor out initially for a Zach Bailey. I like a Zach Bailey this week coming off suspension. I think he'll be raring to go against your boys. And you talk about tricky matchups with the Cozzy Pickett. Zach Bailey is a tricky matchup, and I'm not sure what the Saints' plan will be for them. But the last 2 times Zach Bailey's played the Saints, he's put up 3 goals in each of those games and the scores of 141 and 96 GDS points, with 141 being the most recent score last year. So I think the thing I love about Zach Bailey is he's got that ceiling as well, which I think we look for in our squads. And that's one thing I learned last week was I went probably a bit safe in the forward line, and I think I just need to actually take a risk or two down there and really hunt that player with the ceiling, because you might be insulated a little bit down in the forward line with a handful of players putting up some okay scores. But if you get the one that puts that nice ceiling score up, it can do you a bit of favour, sort of moving up the leaderboard. So I think that's one for me that I'll be looking at this week is a Zach Bailey. And then a Jai Simpkin for the matchup. I think if you're looking at that Bombers matchup, he's one I haven't been super sold on in those last 2 weeks, and not in terms of what he's done. I've liked what he's done. I haven't been sold on him going into the game. So the Port Power matchup in round 1, I wasn't keen on because I didn't like the Port matchup. I think that's a bit of a tough matchup, and he's never really shown great form against them in terms of that GDS ceiling. And then against the Eagles, I was a little bit hesitant because of the fact they were playing them over in the West, and I thought the West Coast could get up. And I wasn't sure if we should be believing that round 1 performance for North just yet. So I didn't want to go there, but I think they look really good. They're back under the lid. They have the best matchup in the AFL. So they're giving up 103.8 GDS points for mids and 85.9 GDS points to forwards. So I think that he's one I'm interested in playing this week, and we know he's got a ceiling too, so he can score quite high. Last time they played, he put up 108 GDS points. And here's the thing: do you know how many marks the Bombers have conceded across the first 2 weeks? An average of 161. So to put that in perspective, that Saints versus Collingwood game at the start of the year, that was 147 marks that was conceded to the Collingwood Magpies, where Houston, Quainer, Billy Frampton, all these guys put up huge scores, and Essendon are averaging 161 marks in total, like across each game, which is just ludicrous. So I think if you can find a player that can take a few marks in that game, you could be on a nice little score in the forward line. I like a Jai Simpkin this week.
Yeah. Well, actually, that kind of takes me to your one to avoid, because I want to know your thinking behind that, because I'm not too off him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It was actually quite hard to find a bit of a player to avoid this week, but the reason why I've gone Todd Marshall is I think that he'll be a popular pick, obviously in the Sunday competition this year, but people will look at him this week because of that 97 last week, and they'll go, oh, the West Coast Eagles matchup, like that's really good. But the problem for me is that like he's a defender this year, so he's not playing as a key forward. So if you look at matchups against the Eagles, it's all well and good to chase that forward matchup. But for defenders, they're actually the 3rd worst matchup for opposition defenders. They've only been giving up an average of 67.6 points on average this year. And that's been consistent for the past 1 or 2 years. They don't concede a huge amount of points to defenders. Marshall scored 53 points in that first game against North in round 1, and I can see it being just another 50 or 60 score on the horizon because he just jumped it up in that last quarter. Like, it was filthy what they were doing. And as I said, the Bombers concede the most marks, 161 average each game. He got involved in that chippy, and I think that with that West Coast matchup, they're not, it's not going to be there. So I think he's another one that I'm actually no, I think I've got his silver. Sorry, in Sunday. I'm pretty sure I have to play him because I think we're quite thin down there in that forward line. But yeah, I would just be very hesitant. I wouldn't be picking him and hoping for what you got last week or expecting another good score just because they're up against the Eagles. I think you got to look at what the Eagles have been giving up and know that I think his score's inflated from last week in that Essendon matchup, and he's one that, yeah, temper expectations. I think it could be another 50 or 60 this week.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout.
But the man on screen, mate, Josh Tracy, I have him in all squads at the moment.
Really?
Yep. I think
he's the one I would be very scared to play him this week. So that's interesting.
Well, knowing what we know now, hey, with this weather. So
Yeah.
I should say that with the weather around, he is one that will probably come out. He'll be the first to come out. If I'm going to jump on anyone in that matchup because of the weather, it's going to be a Josh Tracy because he's a key forward. But mate, here's my thinking for a Josh Tracy. So he's had a great start to that 2026 season. He actually, like, watching them play, he looks like he's leveled up this season. So against Geelong, he scored 82 and he scored 134 last week. And he's kicked 2 and 4 goals respectively, and he really tore Melbourne apart. But the thing I like best is that it's his ability to hit the score. It's not his ability to hit the scoreboard, but he works up the ground and he gets involved in the play, and they use him in that link play. And he's got such a good marking ability that he can actually build a really good score without having to rely on his marks and goals. If you look at a Nick Larkey too, because I have to find it in the chat. Somebody mentioned that. There it is, Nate Daddies. Nate Daddy said, has anyone got like a Jones to play Nick Larkey? I might, but the reason why I would go Josh Tracy over a Nick Larkey is because Nick Larkey is much more reliant on the marks and the goals. So if you actually have a look at the 2 games that Nick Larkey has played, I had that someone there too. So he's kicked, 4 goals, I think it was, and then 6 in the other. And he only ended up putting up, I think it was 114 points was his highest score there. So he really relies on those marks and those goals. So in 6 goals, he put up 114 GDS points. That's Nick Larkey. Whereas if you look at a Josh Tracy, he puts up 134 GDS points, and he's not just relying on those goals, which I really like. Meeting the Tigers at home as well, I think that's a great matchup. I think this is another one that the Dockers can dominate. Obviously, just put an asterisk for the weather. And the last 3 games against the Tigers, he's kicked 6, 5, and 4 goals. Now, that's going back as well to 2024. So he's really gone 4, 5, and 6, I should say. So if you follow that trend, mate, I know you like your trends. He'll kick 7 this week. And the GDS scores, 129, 133, 102, and he's in the best form of his career now. To top it off, bit of the cherry on top, last week, Ben King kicked 7 and Ethan Reid kicked 4, and they scored 112 and 116 GDS points. And Ben King is a Nick Larkey. They rely on marks and goals to get a score. If they don't get those, they're not scoring. Josh Tracy doesn't do that. So if there is any hint that weather he's not going to pass through, I'm locking him into all squads as my bit of a play to chase a ceiling, which is something I want to sort of fix up from last week. And I know that there's always a risk with a key forward, but I think he's a safer key forward than some of the others.
Yeah, no, really right. That I think if he's with that asterisk, I think that's a great shout.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Silver Pigeon to put that in there too. If it wasn't for the weather, Pod Tracy with 8 goals. Yeah, let's keep an eye on that one. Hey, now, anything else you want to touch on quickly before we go? You can see on the screen there the primetime pod, Lockie Schultz. He's been in great form. I'm not sure how much of a pod he's actually going to be in that competition with those reduced players to be picking from. Cozzy Pickett is the Sunday superstar, and Murphy Reid, the player to watch for Freo, just in incredible form and looking so good. And I just cannot get a gold or plat Murphy Reid. I've been putting trades up and everyone's holding on to his cards for dear life. Have you got any other thoughts made on the forwards?
Oh, the only other one, which I think I've seen in the comments, is Isaac Rankin, who essentially more midfield time with Dawson out, but is that then going to draw more attention? So it could be a good play, and it could be a necessary play as well, given how many forwards we have to pick this week with all the big names out. So it could just backfire is my biggest concern. And then with the Rochelle and him, kind of what's going to happen, minutes, midfield, like who's getting it. it's one of those ones where I feel like I'll just make the wrong call, so I kind of want to stay away from it.
Yeah, and Haz has jumped in the chat there too with no Dawson. He says Rankin's a prime candidate to get tagged by Mullen. It's either him or Rochelle, so flip a coin. The thing you got to remember too is they've got two taggers. You know, if they're, and I don't think they would actually tag them both at the same time, although that's what the Cats can do. They did that to Brisbane last year in the qualifying final. They sent a Mark O'Connor to Cam Rayner, and they sent an Ocean Mullen to Hugh McCluggage. So I think if they're getting off the chain, they can. But yeah, I think for me, there's a lot of question marks when picking those two, and it's early in the week. It's Thursday night. I'm not sure if I want to be playing someone like that early. I'll be throwing a Rankin into my challenger team, just because I've got one of the high rarity cards for him. But I'm not doing that because I like the matchup.
Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that one there too. Now, moving on to wrap up, these are our teams there, mate. So that's what we've put together. And now remember the contender team there for Haz on the left, that's his pod team. And my one there as well, that's I have a pod in there, or a couple pods, but typically it's the team I want to be playing across competitions, or for the majority anyway. So in the back line, you can see there we're both keen on a Jaden Short. So it's a Zorko, Dacos, Houston, Wang, Sinclair, and Ash. They're the players that we're pretty keen on playing. There's no Whit, but Whitfield does feature in a couple of our other squads, or actually one other squad, I should say. He only features in our challenger team this week. So we're pretty keen on those matchups. But as you said, we've talked about the weather in that game. Short's the one where maybe I just bring a Whitfield in for safety. If I have question marks, maybe it's a Whitfield that comes in. So that could be a little late swap that we go for. We're both very keen on a Brayshaw, and Haz is throwing a pod in. He's going to throw Caleb Sarong into that, and he's going to hope that he pops the ceiling and just to see how he goes. So that's his little pod there in the midfield. But otherwise, it's pretty consistent. It's going to be a Dacos, Holmes, Smith, Zach Butters we've talked about. And I have to replace Jordan Dawson. So I'm going to have to think about who I put in. I think it's a Finn Callahan, but again, we raised a point about the potential tag being Harry Perriman. So Haz, again, I think I raised this. I was going to message you about it earlier, mate. But what are your thoughts on a potential tag for a Finn Callahan? Do you reckon Harry Perriman might run with him? And does that maybe put you off a Finn Callahan selection? Because maybe I'll then just play a bit safer and go a Caldwell, for example, or one of the other mids we've spoken about. We've got Cherry and Cameron as our rucks there, but I think the two better options would be Cherry and your Jackson. But as I said, splitting those rucks across three teams, it's just in my contender team, I'm playing a Cherry and a Cameron. Gorn's going to feature in my challenger team. So I'm just sort of mixing them all around where I can. And the forward line's pretty consistent. The only key difference there that you're going to see is I'm going for a Josh Tracy that I'm pretty keen on. And then Haz has got that Toby Green there. So what are your thoughts, mate, looking at those sides? Are you seeing some similarities? Have you got some players that sort of spark the interest?
I think, like, after talking through it with you today, like, this is probably going to be a pretty, I mean, not conventional side, but it's going to be, there's a lot of key picks in here that you probably have to make this week. So
yeah,
midfield, you've got maybe a couple of slots to play around with. For defence, you've maybe got one or two, depending on how many you want to drop of the big names. The forward line's where you're going to be kind of winning or losing the round, I think. So I think your strategy is right, chasing the big ceiling scores this week, because you can kind of almost rely on most people picking similar teams in the back end of your field. That if you can nail that, you'll win a round. If you don't nail it, you're probably not going to fall that far behind anyway. So yeah, I really like it.
What you've just said is exactly what I realised last week looking at my rankings and my squads. I should have taken a risk in that forward line and I didn't. So particularly with that one dropping off, I think you've got every chance this year to do that. So I think that's my plan this week. Sure. And yeah, Haz has jumped in there. Perryman to Callahan is a great shout. And yeah, mate, I didn't even think about it either. It's just something and I thought about it and I knew you were at footy. I checked the time and I was like, oh, he started footy. No point sending him a message. I'll chat to Hoss about it. So it's good to see that you're thinking the same. So I might have to look elsewhere to a Finn Callahan then if that's potentially going to happen. Now, mate, we've got our BroDown ShowDown. I took out a win. Again, I'm up to 2-1 this season, so I'm stoked with that. I was winless for a while, and we had a under-22s edition last week, so I had a Fonty, Dersma, and Murphy Reid, and Haz went with a Caleb Windsor, Harley Reid, and Bailey Humphrey. So I got up there 2-1 in that particular matchup. So Fonty and Murphy Reid, they were in people. Bailey Humphrey, a bit disappointing, particularly against a nice matchup there. And then Harley Reid obviously just had a really nice end to that game. But both he and Dersma were awesome for the Eagles. I was really impressed with both those boys. And how's that Harley Reid prize card going for you?
Oh man, it's doing wonders because it's basically carrying all my other mistakes, which is great because got that, and I have the Sheasel All Star as well sitting up front, so it's pretty nice. I just need to actually get good at the other picks.
There's some nice cards to have. Hey, that's unreal seeing that prize card Harley getting around. So to those that backed me in last week, thank you. You can see your names there on screen. I've got everyone in our YouTube comments. Going to spin this wheel. We're going to see who is going to win the 9-player All-Star Common Pack. As I said, I'm giving away the whole pack just because I'm so up and about with how I'm going in the BroDown ShowDown. And it looks like Izzy. Well done, Izzy.
Oh,
so he has got himself that
pack.
9-player.
Yeah.
He does, doesn't he? He's good at it.
Every footy show they're on it as well. Oh, 100%. I rate it.
Yeah, you got to be in it to win it, don't you? So, no, it's good. And without Izzy's support as well, like we can't do what we do. So,
100%.
And everyone too that jumps in those comments, we really appreciate it. And yeah, I know you would know that too, mate, with all the work you do. Can you see that pack on screen?
Can do.
All righty, let's see how we go. Izzy, whole pack is yours. I'm going to keep giving away the whole pack as well until I... All right. So again, until something good is given out in these packs, I'm just going to keep giving away the whole thing to whoever backs me in. Obviously, if I win, I know Haz is going hard this week in the selection. So hopefully I can keep getting some wins. So all of these cards will be up for Izzy. So we've got a Tom Cole, Ned Reeves, Platinum Clay Hall, Silver Jack Carroll for the Saints, a Silver Luke for the Freo Dockers.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. That's the right card there. Oh, that's a good one too. A silver Naz, a silver Lockie Schultz. What's this one? And a gold Ryan Burns. Okay, so there's a couple good cards in there for sure. So Izzy, mate, all 9 cards there. They're all yours. You hit me up in the Discord and tell me which ones you want. You can take them all, and I'll organize those trades to get across to you. And then... yeah, I think I'll probably give out another one as well, I think. If I can get up again, I'll go another all-star pack, and, yeah, we'll just keep going, I think.
Nice. I think the karma...
So this week, mate, for our...
line.
Yeah, I need everything. Haz is good. He's very smart with how he does this, so that's why I'm so happy I've got these wins. I don't like to tell him that, but he's very good at what he does. So this week, it's the Sunday Showdown edition. So it is only players from the FantasyBros Sunday Showdown. Ruck's not included. So we have gone in the back line. It is Christian Salem for Haz versus my Trent Rivers. We have gone Jack Steele. So Haz has Jack Steele in the midfield versus my Zach Butters. And then in the forward line, it is Haz's Cozzy Pickett versus my Joe Richards. So comment in the chat now. Who do you think will get up this week? Is it going to be Haz or will it be me? So there are our picks there. Salem, Steele, and Pickett versus Rivers, Butters, and Richards. Get your comment in the chat now because if you pick the right bro next week, you will be getting some player cards that you could win. Hoss, if you were looking there, mate, I'm happy to write your name down now. Who would you be going with?
I don't think you want to hear this.
Isn't it?
I love Steele. I think he could go big this week again. I think he's now kind of free to do what he does best rather than having the weight of... well, I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of responsibility, but he's not, captaining, carrying the weight of everything else. He's just in there tackling, getting points for us. Salem, Rivers, that's going to be a tight one, I think, depending on, I guess, how the game goes, maybe more than anything. And then, I think
exactly.
Aussie could go big too. So I do worry for you there, Pitty, but it could surprise us.
We'll see. Yeah, you just never know. Sometimes some of these picks can really surprise you. So Nate Daddy, he's gone Haz as well. Hoss, I've written your name down for Haz. Mel's, she's showing her support to me. Thank you, Mels. I appreciate that. And we got Stephen as well. He's going Haz, Silver Pigeon, and Izzy. Max as well. You're all going Has, so I can't knock you for that. He's got some really good picks there. How can you say no to that? I think someone mentioned earlier too. Is it Steele or Cripps? I didn't get a chance to highlight that comment. I'm Jack Steele all the way. I think if you're picking out of those two, I think it's a Jack Steele, given his form, and plus like Cripps not sit forward. So I think I love a Jack Steele pick, and I think he's probably a pod for your standard comps as well that we probably haven't talked about. So yeah, that's where I'm probably thinking myself there, mate. But that brings us to the end of the episode there, mate. So thanks again for joining us. Like, we really appreciate that. Users as well, just make sure if you haven't used that code FBR26, do so. Get yourself three 9-player common packs to get your Contender team started. And yeah, Hoss, again, mate, I really appreciate your time jumping on these episodes. I love your insights. And yeah, I think our viewers have gotten a lot out of this episode. I hope as we make some key decisions for round 3.
Yeah, well, hopefully I can get some key insight out of it, because I haven't actually picked my team yet. So that's what I'm going to go do now while it's all fresh. But yeah, best of luck to everyone.
I love that.
Cup.
Yeah, best of luck to you too. Round 2 in the cup, mate. Yeah, let's hope we can get through to another week, and I hope everyone can get through. We know that's not how a cup works, but good luck to everyone. And yeah, good luck as we make these final decisions. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great night, and good luck for round 3.